Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining all of us today for the second Colombia CBIPS lecture series on the AEC industries experience related to COVID-19. I'm Fenioski Peñamora. I'm the director of the Columbia Center for Buildings, Infrastructure, and Public Space, and I'm also a professor here at the Columbia University School of Engineering and Applied Science. Our lecture program will continue every Tuesday at noon into September. We will have in total 19 lectures. This is the second. So please check out the website to see more information about the week speaker that we are going to be presenting, as well as the co-moderators that are going to be hosting these lectures with me. I would like to give a special thank you to the organizations that are collaborating with all of us and making this possible. They are the American Council of Engineering Companies, New York. I would like to give a shout out to Jay Simpson for all his help. The American Institute of Architects at New York as well. Thanks Ben Prosky and Kim Yao for their support. The American Society of Civil Engineers. I would like to thank Tom Smith and Ben Paul. The Construction Management Association of America, New York, New Jersey chapter. I would like to thank Vinnie Falkowski, as well as the Engineering News Record. And I would like to thank John Tuckman for her support. And last but not least, the National Academy of Construction. I would like to thank Wayne Crew for all their support. Today, I'm pleased to have Marcos Diaz-Gonzalez joining me as the co-moderator for this Zoom lecture. Marcos is the Vice President at AECOM. He's also the co-chair of the advisory board of the Center for Buildings, Infrastructure, and Public Space. Welcome, Marcos.
Thank you.
Our speaker today, the second speaker in the series, is Eric Macfarlane, Deputy Commissioner for Infrastructure for the New York Department of Design and Construction. He oversees around 500 active projects and has under his leadership over 500 engineers, architects, as well as different staff. He constructs all the civic projects around the city in all 5 boroughs, such as public plazas, bike lanes, select bus services, pedestrian bridges, bioswales, sewers, and water mains. Mr. Macfarlane is a licensed engineer in New York and received his master's in civil engineering from Polytechnic Institute of New York and NYU Tandon School of Engineering. He received his Bachelor of Engineering degree from the City College of New York. And you can see his full bio in the website. So thank you, both of you, Marcos and Eric, for being here. And I would like now to give the floor to Eric to share some of his thoughts in terms of the experience that he's having leading the efforts for the infrastructure division of DDC in terms of COVID-19. Eric?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Professor Fenioski. And welcome all. I hope everybody's well. First of all, and we are doing okay. We're surviving, and today I'm going to talk about the challenges of the situation that we are in right now. Let me start with the screen so you can see. I will share my screen and my PowerPoint so you can see what I'm talking about. We can discuss. I hope everybody can see this right now.
Coming up, yes. Yes.
Okay, and let me take this out so I can.
You can put it in display mode.
I'm trying to do that. Hold on. How do I do this? Okay, good. All right. So, display mode. Right. Hold on. Let me finish setting this up completely. Okay, there we are. So I assume everybody can see the white screen. Yes. So we're talking about the way we are managing. So this is a management report that I prepare every week for the commissioner of DDC to tell them, to explain to her what is going on in the division. So I sort of edited it a little bit for this purpose of this presentation. So on March 7th, the governor declared the state of emergency to combat coronavirus. And as part of the executive orders that he put out, and 202.6 and 202.8, there's a lot of things sitting there. But one of the issue that concerns us is that essential construction was included, the roadways, the bridges, the facility, and all the basically public municipal construction, which means that the construction that I was doing in infrastructure continued, were not suspended, but as opposed to the buildings and non-essential, so-called non-essential construction. Municipal construction was designated to be an essential a function. That was emphasized or implemented by the mayor with the Executive Order 102, where again repeated the same thing. Essentially, made the point of that municipal construction would continue. Well, what does that mean? So we right now, what we at that time, what we had is a total division staff infrastructure of 447 employees. So immediately we had to decide what is essential for staff, what is not non-essential. Not that everybody's essential, but for the purpose of this exercise, we had to create two lists. We have to create two lists. And 360 of my division employees, including in-house design staff, had to go telework. What that means, in order to facilitate telework, we had to make sure that a particular design staff, that they had the equipment necessary to work at home. So we, my IT division, essentially ordered hundreds of hold on. So my IT department ordered hundreds of Surface Boards, laptop, all kind of equipment that you needed to actually be able for those people that didn't have up-to-date computers at home. In addition to this, they made an arrangement for the staff that's working at home to be able to particularly remote access their desktop at the office. That was particularly important for a design staff, because in order for my in-house design staff to work on a CAD workstation, they had to access the DDC equipment. So that was done. In addition to this, the consultant design project was suspended because the city decided that all financial resources had to be directed to COVID-19 activities, so all my consultant design stopped, except for some critical design that had to be because either they had a mandate, a federal mandate, or funding that had deadline on it, and stuff like that. So some consultant had to continue with these designs, but most of our project was suspended. As I said before, construction, however, remained active. So at that time, I have 149 construction sites citywide going on, and of that, 87 of the staff active that covered the active site construction were DDC employees, and for consultant, we had about 745 consultant staff covering all these jobs. So the first thing that we have to do then is to establish the safety protocols how we're going to handle this. Let me see if it will come up. Yes, there we go. So we have to publish, I don't know if everybody can see this. So we have to publish not only the site safety protocol, but in general for everybody. So it's the same precaution, safety precaution that has been published all over. And essentially, safe distance, mask, PPEs, hygiene procedures, washing the hands and not touching your face, and cleaning and sanitation of the field offices, because each one of these 149 field construction site has a field office. So I have about 149 field offices to cover all these projects, and so although our headquarters were emptied out, everybody had to telework, but my field offices remained open. So we had to provide a safety protocol for not only the DC staff, but also the consultant staff that are covering these jobs. And social, as I said, social distances, the trailer or field office being sanitized, no handshaking, we do not, and the purpose of the field office is usually to allow the community where we're working to have access to our construction staff if they have any question or any problem. So because of COVID-19, we basically cancel all in face-to-face meeting at the field offices. So no field office meeting. But again, we had telephone, we had this particular teleconferences that could be done, all kind of stuff. And not only for the resident, but also for the contractor. All our progress meetings, all our any kind of meetings that in the past that were face-to-face became teleconferencing. So that is that's one of the things that we had to do. And the staff itself had to be staggered. In other words, not everybody had to be in the field office at the same time. So we had different schedule for everybody. And of course, personal hygiene, I mentioned that before. The access to construction site, we basically had to make sure that everybody were following the protocol and complying all of this. I have to say that most people took that, well, all of them took that very seriously, because essentially, as we were doing construction, I will show you in a slide later, certain cases people tested positive, which means that essentially they had to isolate, we had to go on quarantine, we had to shut down some jobs for 14 days quarantine, and the field office had to be sanitized, and so on and so forth. So people, this was a serious thing to be working in this environment under these conditions. So again, no job site visitors, basically, as I mentioned before, teleconferences and everything else. The temperature check, all that stuff was in effect. I mentioned personal protective equipment, PPEs, and work practice control. We established that. Job site cleaning and disinfection. And of course, overarching all of this are the OSHA record keeping and all other federal requirements that people had to follow. Okay, let me see if I can. Hold on. Let me get to the next slide. Oh, okay, so that's one important thing. So one thing we developed is what is called the safety checklist, and this is, again, the purpose of that was to get everybody to focus daily on these requirements that I just mentioned. And we had a checklist that people will fill out, not people, actually my inspectors and the contractor representative and everybody had to fill out and to answer some check, make sure that all of these steps, protective stuff and safety stuff, were being addressed. And that is being done on a daily basis for each one of our jobs. In the morning, that my inspectors goes out and they check all of these things to make sure that everybody is following safety protocol. And that, if you can read, you can see from so we had this checklist that the purpose of it was not only to record this, but also to keep people focused on this. So they have to do this daily. In addition to this, again, as I mentioned, specific to job site, we actually published some safety advisory where we repeated all the critical requirements of to maintain the safety protocol. Right. So once that's done, okay, then we had to deal with the issue of how we're going to manage this. How we're going to manage this. So one thing we had to do is essentially I had to establish this emergency management task force, which was consisted of my top executive, my assistant commissioner, assistant commissioners, and executive directors, to meet with them every day. We have a meeting every day at 2 o'clock to discuss specific projects. And so that is what we established. The other thing that we will see from the list, we have to basically streamline our priorities. to make sure that we are focusing on things that are absolutely essential that must continue. It's not the whole program. As Dr. Finyowski mentioned before, I have about over 500 projects. Well, we're not going to deal with 500 projects during this period. So we had to focus precisely on what was important that had to be delivered. One thing that had to be delivered is our commitment plan. So we were in the middle of wrapping up the fiscal year 20, which ends June 30th, 2020, to deliver projects that were committed before. The things that were designed, that were bid, and were ready to start construction. So that had to continue, and mostly that had to continue in beside construction. Remember now, all my staff, all the design staff, everybody was teleworking. So we are doing this remotely for the most part. And of course, the next thing that as I mentioned before, in order to keep everybody focused on this, one of the key things during emergency when everybody's teleworking is to make sure that we are in contact with the staff. We don't want people to, although they are called non-essential, but we don't want them to feel that they are being left out. So not only do I meet with my senior staff every day, but also the senior staff, each one of these group heads meets their own staff. So it's all cascade down. So we sort of basically cover everybody on a daily basis, just to make sure that the staff that are working at home, don't feel left out or start being depressed or stuff like that. So we encourage everybody to actually keep in touch. And of course, the project tracking list, which means there's certain key projects, as I mentioned before, that we had to make sure that they stay on track. And I have my program management group. They had certain key functions that they had to continue. My design group, as I mentioned, there are certain key projects they had to continue. And of course, construction, all 149 active projects had to be supervised. And of course, and to encourage everybody to stay focused, I required basically to have them to produce a weekly update by programs. And of course, and the details, as I said, the last number 8, which is we did provide the commissioner with details of all of these projects of the that we're working on. But again, that's if they want to go into detail. But essentially, we provided an executive summary of all these programs on a weekly basis. Hold on, these things seem okay, right? Okay, I see. So the commitment plan status. So as I mentioned, and this is basically a slide that shows the entire program by borough, right? So you can see that Manhattan, one of the largest projects that we have that we had to basically start bidding is the East Side Coastal Resiliency, which is $1.2 billion, but just by itself. That had to continue. And of course, we had project in construction, project in construction procurement, and again, a project that inspect that we're about to bid, and then projects that we essentially, certain project we had moved to fiscal year 21 because we know there's no way we can make these projects. And that you can see by borough what's happening. And based on this, we are about to make almost 87% of our design commitment plan, design completion. There were 91 projects in total for this fiscal year, 79 and of course, if you look at the breakdown of this 79 project, we have 29 in construction, 47 in construction procurement, and 3 in specification. 12 projects were moved to fiscal year 21 because of issues that we know would not get resolved before June 30th. And that include having to deal issue with the sponsor agencies, with the federal requirements, and approval. And 2 projects basically in design that where we stopped the consultant because of this financial financial reorientation of the resources toward COVID-19. So there's no money based on March. As of March, we told all these consultants that were doing non-critical critical projects, basically pencil that we are not paying for anything beyond March. So you stop right now. So whatever we'll pay you for what you've done up to March. So which is what, of course, you can imagine the huge problem that we gave these consultants, and a lot of them have laid off people already, and so on and so forth. So it is a painful situation for everybody. Looking at the more detail into the design commitment plan, right? So we have project in specs, project in that's final design is done, is construction procurement. Some projects already are in construction, and of course, some projects are moved to fiscal year 21, and some are in final design, which won't make this fiscal year anyway. So that is what we are looking at. And if you look at the pie chart, it is by borough. As you can see, the largest one is Manhattan, which is basically include the coastal resiliency project, which is $1.2 billion. And of course, on the other side, on the left side, right side, these are just the numbers. And for construction, we expect that we're going to exceed the commitment plan by to up to 144%. Why? Because but the initial plan was that we will complete 52 projects by this summer. However, we are on target to complete almost 75 projects. What happened is that some project got delayed, some project got added. So 34, and out of that, 38 of our original project were directly impacted by COVID-19 during this fiscal year. And there are details here as to why the reasons why this happened. So for example, successful completion of 5 projects were pushed out of the entire fiscal year. Additional 17 projects were rebaselined for the following reasons: 7 projects delayed by utility interferences. DOT requested we extend the duration of sidewalk contracts, and so on and so forth. So there were reasons why some of these projects were moved out. But nevertheless, we added to additional project to this, which means that we will be completed 75 projects instead of 52. And this is basically if you look at this, the dollar value in construction, we have 461 million. Success completion, basically 454 million. Down below on the left hand side, you will see what the distribution by borough is. And on the right hand side, it's just the numbers that matches these dollar values. So, as I said, the way we are managing this right now is that we have a daily meeting with all group within infrastructure, all the major group in the infrastructure, to go over a status of where we are. In particular, we pay very much attention to not only the progress of these projects, but also whether or not we have cases of COVID-19 present on site or among the staff. That's very important that during this pandemic, that we basically keep track of the health of our staff and be concerned about what's happening, because especially people that I don't see, they're at home. So we need to sort of inquire and make sure that we understand what issues they have. Because certain people have asked for extended teleworking. We sort of renew the teleworking instruction every week, but certain people already have figured out that with their kid out of school, which it won't be starting who knows when, So they're going to need some of these people. Even if we say everybody comes back to work, they won't be able to come back to work. So some people have already identified this and asked for family leave, basically. And these for the most part have been approved. In addition to that, there are certain things that we want to continue. We have an initiative where we are going to convert, do project control with Primavera P6, where we will have we will track every one of our projects in Primavera. So that is an important, that we have to continue this in the sense that there's a scheduling issue involved. We're already in the progress of doing this, and so we must continue this. Otherwise, we have to start all over again. So that's continuing. The other issue that we were being concerned with is the issue of constructability review. Essentially, it's a problem, especially the street work. It's the issue of looking at the project, and Dr. Finocchi can tell you. I mean, he was there. We've been talking about constructability review forever. It's such a for some reason it's such a hard thing for people to do, to get all these groups together before we bid the job, to look at the job and make sure that all issues, potential issues that we could encounter has been identified. So that's something that we're doing before COVID-19, and we wanted to continue. In addition to that, we took the opportunity of people working at home and having access to all this computer equipment to actually do some training. Okay, so in particular the design groups, we hired, we hired, and we were in the process of hiring brand new staff. And once you come into the design group, there must be training. Some training got to take place. So we are continuing doing this different topic every week for design training, and of course. Discussion, keep in touch with the IT department to make sure we have the resources and the functionalities that we need to actually be able to work at home. So, as I said, we identified certain projects that were critical. That essentially we were not going to concentrate on 500 projects, but there are certain projects that are critical that we cannot lose sight of. For example, 42nd Street. Well, there is not as you know, we put security, perimeter security around Times Square, but there's also a need to actually put security along 42nd Street from 7th Avenue to 8th Avenue. As anybody's gone in this area, the theater district in this area, you can see that there are tons of people there, night and almost night and day, basically. So it's a very crowded area, and there was a lot of concern about security and terrorism in this area. So again, that is an issue, and that's one of the issues that what I mean when I say that besides COVID-19 we are dealing with right now, there are other issues that are still alive that we have to deal with. For example, the security issue. And I'll mention some of them, some more later on. And of course, all of a sudden, the East Side Coastal Resiliency, right? There was an issue of the flyover bridge, which DOT was going to be doing. That's around 14th Street. If you guys are familiar with the FDR, around 14th Street, where the Connect Treatment Plant is, there's a narrow, very narrow path between the park, the East River Park, and going north, further north. And the idea is that we are going to connect. We're going to put a bridge, a pedestrian bridge that would be wider to allow people to actually go from one side of the park to the other, bypassing, going over all the connected facilities to go on the other side. So that is something that the reason it's there is because we can't delay this further, because as we're moving with the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, we have to make sure that this design is ready so that we can actually implement this before 2025 or 2024. Shorewood, that's another thing that the projects that were in the Augusta Manor area, where the seawall is basically collapsing. So we basically have to do something about this. Again, that points out to another problem. The infrastructure is in bad shape. The entire of the city of New York, it's an old infrastructure, and there was a huge capital program that were being that we were basically managing, designing, and constructing to actually keep the municipal infrastructure system in good working order. The problem with infrastructure is that, right, okay, so now we are focused on COVID-19, but infrastructure is deteriorating. That continues to deteriorate. It is not getting better, it's not staying in place. So we have to address these issues sooner or later. Unfortunately, right now, the financial situation is not clear. So again, but nevertheless, we are doing the best we can to keep those projects on track. And you can see so on and so forth. One interesting one is number 5, which is the City Island water main. What we are doing here is something that we have not done in this New York City. To my knowledge, nobody has done this. We are doing a horizontal drilling to put new water main from Bronx to City Island under the bay. And so, and the reason we're doing this is that City Island is served by only one water main at this point, one line. If something happened to the City Island, it has no water. So right now we're going to install under the bay with judicial drilling, which is a technology that we have not used in the city, to install put 2 water main, install 2 water main feed to City Island. Again, that is something that's taking place in the issue with judicial drilling is that once we have all the equipment on site, everything on site, and when you start the drilling, you cannot stop. So that is one of the reasons that this is a critical project, besides the fact that City Island water system needs to be reinforced. And of course, again, this slide is just showing you certain things. So because of COVID-19 and the fact that the controller is not registering any projects that is not related to COVID-19. So here I have a bunch of projects that are registered. Okay, I can't start them because I do not have the construction management staff in place. Because that's a separate contract. You have a construction contract and a consultant contract to manage the construction. And all of these have been stuck right now because New York City Controller is insisting that nothing gets registered unless it's COVID-19 related. So that's a delay. That's a slide that I put there in my commissioner's report to give them a heads up that, hey, look, we're not going to make it if something is not done about this, particularly for these projects. All right. And the rest of the slides are basically the weekly report that we put out for specific projects that are critical, that we need action on. For program management group, which basically is responsible to initiate all the projects that we get from the sponsor agencies, mainly DOT, Department of Transportation, or DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, sewer and water, or waterways. But there are certain critical projects that we must actually take. We need action on. Either, as you can see from the list here, certain project has to do with pre-CBIPS, which is basically where we're trying to acquire property to actually facilitate the installation of these projects, construction of these projects. And of course, a certain city hall requirement, which I just mentioned, which is coastal resiliency. The coastal resiliency is interesting, is that not only we have federal funding in there that you may lose if we don't use it on time, but also global extreme weather event is not waiting for us until we are ready for it. We don't know when that might happen. This summer, the hurricane season is coming. Who knows what we're going to get? So we cannot stop really the resiliency projects. And of course, Send Out 2, which is a streetscape project in downtown Rockaway. This is an area of the city that has been neglected over the years as far as capital projects is concerned. So this is a major project that we are doing in this area that was promised by the mayor, city hall, and everybody else, and that we have to complete. And design also reports. What you see here is, in order, remember I said that OMB had basically told us to cancel or pause for financial reason all the design consultant, right? So the idea was, but one of the they are considering is that we had to prioritize these projects into level of priorities, and for design to get the design consultant back, and procurement to continue the procurement on this project. So we gave them a list. We sort of took all our projects and prioritized them as to what we need to them to sort of give us the money to actually continue these projects. And of course, design also had this set of activities. The people that are working, not the consultant, however, the people that are the in-house, some consultant, the critical consultant projects, and some in-house project have to continue while we are either teleworking, or we gave some waivers to certain consultant projects for them to continue doing these projects. And then construction. Construction, as I said, we had 149 projects. So at this point, 110 are active, 39 are inactive, and there are 3 projects that are paused to COVID-19. Pause means that somebody or one person or maybe more than one contact are tested positive, which means that immediately the project stops and everybody quarantined for 14 days. Okay, so that's where, as you can see from the graph over here, sometime in March or in April, that is where we peaked, about 48. Actually, no, 38. About 38 projects that were stopped, and as you can see, it's been declining ever since. So, and that's when, of course, that's when we were implementing all the safety procedures that I mentioned before. So at some point, apparently it became effective at some point, and the amount of people, at least catching this virus from the construction site, began to decline. Obviously, we can't do anything about when they leave the site, but as far as site safety and protocols are concerned, as you can see, right now we're pretty good. There's only 3 projects that are stopped because of this COVID-19 cases. And we keep track of this, as I said, every day, because the minute we know about this, we basically have to take action to find out who was in contact with this person, and whether or not we should, not only the contractor got to stop, but also do I have to stop my staff also, if they've been in contact with this, whoever that individual was, and basically have them quarantine at home. And again, as I said, same thing for construction. There are certain projects that we are critical, that we are tracking very closely, and this is the list of them. And as I mentioned, the perimeter security, right now we are putting those bollards or security around Empire State Building. That's where we are right now. As far as it's concerned, we already finished working for the center in St. Patrick. Right now we are at Empire State. And that is what we are doing here. As far as construction, and as I mentioned, coastal resiliency, there are basically 3 projects right now, or 4 projects that we have to consider the fact that the storm season is approaching, and although we won't be able to finish this this year, but nevertheless, these are projects that cannot be ignored or dropped. And as you can see, I mentioned the first one here, which is the East Side River Park, right? The bulkhead, the waterfront bulkhead, is not in great shape. So we have a project out there to go for a consultant to go and do an analysis of the condition of the bulkhead and platform. And of course, we have the East Side Coastal Resiliency Project, $1.4 billion. We have the Red Hook, which is again 100 million, and we have the Breezy Point, which is about 58 million. These are resiliency projects that we basically that must continue, because essentially you are facing the same risk, weather, flooding risk, that it's not getting better. It's going to get worse. So there's no point in no sense in not doing in pausing this. And of course, we have our sustainable infrastructure, where and this particular one is important because that's one of those program that is related to federal funding and federal mandate. There's a consent order for the city or for DEP to reduce the combined sewer overflow in the city of New York. So and it's a consent order, which means that if you miss certain deadline, okay, you basically will be fined, or there's a penalty for this, for missing for missing these deadlines or the quantities, and that is why the green infrastructure or sustainable infrastructures are being also are considered critical for during this period. This one, the Great Street Vision Zero, I have to tell you about this. This is something which is dear to City Hall, and that we basically have to continue. And some of them are in active construction, and some of them, as you can see from the status column, we have the consultant, but we have not been able to, we have the contractors, but we have not been able to start this project because we don't have the consultant to manage the, we have flagged this to OMB and higher up, our administration people, to actually go and try to ask for waivers or lobby to get these money to get the construction management contracts released. And of course, the other program that we have to continue is that is very important to the city is the pedestrian program. As you know, or you may or not know, but the city is under a mandate to put pedestrian to allow access to every sidewalk, wheelchair access or baby carriages or so on and so forth, for every sidewalk in the city of New York. So there's a huge program to install this so-called pedestrian ramp at every corners in New York City. So we have a bunch of contracts that we're putting out, and that essentially at this point are kind of stuck because of COVID-19, but we have to pursue those things because we don't know exactly, and the law department is involved in this. We don't know exactly what the consequences of not meeting the schedule or the milestone of this program going to be. So the law department is involved to negotiate with the people that complain and the court as to how COVID-19 has affected this program. Of course, and of course, as I mentioned before, we have details of all these different projects that in the program that I just talked about. That usually, and that's to go if anybody wants to go into details. But for the commissioner's purposes or reporting to executives, what I just talked about for the slide that I showed before are basically an executive summary of everything that we are doing. That being said, this is basically all the information that I have. Any question?
Thank you, Eric. Marcos, I think he's going to be leading, and thank you for the presentation and such a lot of details on the process that you're following in managing the pre-construction portfolio and design portfolio that you have during this crisis. So I will give it to Marcos to start it off on the questions and answers.
Okay, great. Thank you, Faniowski, and thank you, Eric, for also for your public service. You've kept a lot of things moving forward in a very, very time sensitive and also very difficult time in the city of New York. But of course, as you can imagine, you have an interesting mix here in your audience, and a lot of the questions are really going to be about how to move the ball forward, potentially with more volume for your own supply chain. That's listening to some of the your presentation. So one of the questions that we have from the audience is you talked about specifically streamlining priorities as determined by a list of criteria, including factors like political, life safety, and time sensitivity. So can you elaborate in the way that the city and your department in particular has, in which way, in which manner, specific projects were selected. As you can imagine, you have a lot of sub-consultants and subcontractors, but also a fairly large proportion of your supply chain is the M&W community and the small businesses. So I think you have a lot of people asking, you know, why were their projects not moved forward? And if there is any criteria that the city maintains under their consideration, or if that criteria is evolving as things sort of reopen back.
Right. So yes, there were some criteria, as you mentioned some of them before, just now. So life safety, that's a continue. The projects that have federal money in there, because all the federal money comes with deadline, and if you don't use the money by a certain time, or you don't miss a milestone, well, we hope that the federal will consider the situation, but that's an unknown at this point. We have to assume that if we don't use the money by a certain period of time, we will not get the money. And that's a significant amount of money we're talking about, especially in this situation right now, where the city finances are not, the greatest. So there's no point losing money at this point. But one of the issues that we have is particularly the WMB community, which is basically, which were mostly, so we had a few prime consultant, but most of the WMB communities are mostly a sub-consultant, or some is a sub-consultant, which essentially were stopped basically because of the directive that we got from OMB. Fortunately for the sub-consultants that are on the construction management side, because we continue the construction, these consultants will remain on board. So that was minimized a little bit, but it definitely hit very hard the consultant community, the design consultant community. This part, and as I said, many suffered laid off. But most of for the consultant side, the issue was not so much life and safety. Is a question of the fact that the city right now is directing all their resources, financial resources, toward fighting COVID-19. And so until this is stabilized, or sort of back to normal, whatever that means at this point, that's a problem. That continues. That the focus is on COVID-19 activities. As far as the financial resources is concerned, and that is what it is. I mean, there's no other great complexity about this. It's just we have to save money, we have to address COVID-19, and we have to continue projects that are critical for the municipalities. There are certain, as you know, I don't know, some of you may have been around in the 70s or 80s when the city was financial trouble and you had deferred maintenance. What that means is that when you are ready to start again, you have a bigger problem on your hand. So there's a lot of I think people learn their lesson on this, and there's a great deal of consideration being taken right now to make sure that we don't cut down the capital program that much, because we know that when we have to start again, it's going to be much more expensive. So that's what we are doing right now.
Thank you, Eric. And I would like to say that, as Marcos mentioned, we are very thankful for your service and your continued leadership in moving some of these projects forward. And there is a question that is coming all the way from London by Natalia Manning that is asking that in previous recessions, major international or cosmopolitan cities were able to benefit from global investment to rebound. In the recession facing us now, this may not be possible as before. The question that she posed is there a focus to be more self-sustaining in the future? But I would like to modify that question a little bit, because you already mentioned some of the challenges in terms of the finances from the city. and putting all the energy in trying to support activities to fight COVID-19 and projects that relate to COVID-19. But there have been some questions in terms of their approach of stopping a significant portion of the design activities in DDC. And if you recall, during the recession in 2009, and the stimulus package that was put forward, the major focus was for projects that were shovel ready. That means projects that already had designs and were ready to be bid and put people to work. As you are thinking, looking at Natalia's question in terms of self-sufficiency, but also looking at the financial equation of federal funding, how do you see this issue related to stopping design activities and the possibility that some stimulus may require to have shovel-ready projects?
That's a good question, and the answer to this could be a little bit controversial, in the sense that, first of all, being that's the global recession, it's going to be a global event. It's not just the United States. So which means that the idea that we could actually, and in a case like that, there should be more global collaboration, and particularly with the major players in the world. So I don't want to get there too much, but you can see, everybody can see that that's not happening. If it's happening, it's not being publicized in the media. So I don't actually know how we're going to do that. But the issue of lesson learned about being more self-reliant is very important, because I think that what this situation showed us is that essentially, in order to, that's my opinion, in order to maximize profit, there was a warehousing of excess material, and everything else was not done. So we were faced with a bunch of shortages and a bunch of unnecessary things. It's not that we can't produce these things, but it just wasn't stored properly. Everybody was cut down on inventory. So now I think one of the lessons learned is that inventory has got to be rebuilt. It's going to be more expensive, but so be it. But because otherwise, we're going to have this over again. And as far as shovel ready, one of the lessons again that we learned that should have been learned in 2009 when the stimulus package was issued, and the requirement was having shovel ready projects. That's great, except that all the requirements, all the bureaucratic requirements were not streamlined. So which means that even if you had a project that was shovel ready, you still had to go to a huge, lengthy approval process, a procurement process. And so by the time you're shovel ready, well, it's not shovel ready in 2 months. It's going to be shovel ready in 8 months. Or 9 months, which is defeat the purpose of all of this. So, and that points out to something that in an emergency. Look, we have been to many emergencies, right? And such as the one that I'm familiar with is 9/11, where somebody got to be in charge. You got to put somebody in charge of this thing, okay? A group of people got to be in charge, and everything has to be coordinated in order for this to happen. We were able to clear the site in 8 months, 8 to 9 months. Somebody were looking at this when it first happened. They said, whoa, that's going to take 2 years, $5 billion. Well, it didn't happen. Essentially, the bureaucracy was streamlined. All the requirements were streamlined. Everybody cooperated, and we got this done. Same thing should have happened here, which is not happening. So I really don't know how this is going to end. I mean, we are looking here. Hopefully, somebody will wake up and say, "Look, we got to, this got to be coordinated better." So that's the issue that we have. So I don't see how we're going to. Right now, I don't think anybody sees what the end of this. I really, it's very worrisome. Let's put it this way.
Thank you, Eric. Marcos?
Yes, Eric, thank you for that answer. And actually, the next question from the audience is partially related to that. I think when some of the pause orders are starting to arrive in New York City. There was a sort of a general question as to why some agencies had a larger impact in terms of shutting down specific construction projects in other agencies or other departments. In your case of your department, I think you were able to move things forward. But what is the if you have a general sense as to why that discrepancy from agency to agency or department to department in terms of the actual construction shutdown, which I think in general a lot of people feel is going to take a slightly longer time, obviously, to gain momentum back, especially as a way to regenerate the economy with construction dollars.
Yeah, that is true. And the construction group that were particularly affected was the buildings, and essentially buildings were sort of considered non-essential. And that was basically based on the governor's executive order and the city's executive orders, where they were trying to determine what is essential, what is not essential. A building, they felt, believe it or not, whether that's true or not, we could stop the building and pick it up later. On the other hand, if I'm doing a water main, essentially, and remember now, for water main in particular, it's a water main replacement, which means that I have shut down the water in order for me to replace this. So I cannot basically stop the job until I finish connecting the new water main so that I can put water back in service. And that is more important even for what the so-called trunk main, which is essentially bring water from the water supply from upstate down into the city. Once you shut something, one of these big mains down to actually replace it, the schedule cannot be stopped, because essentially you have to put the water back in service. Otherwise, the city of New York water supply pressures are going to be affected. So there are certain projects that you do that you cannot stop, as opposed to a building. So that was basically the most affected. And the building was shut down basically because you could not maintain safe distance, social distance, and the PPPs, the protective equipment were not up to par. Basically, people had complained about all this, so which is why the building mostly shut down. But as I said, as far as the infrastructure, municipal construction is concerned, that was not. Although if you read the executive order, it is it's sort of very convoluted. It's not clear, okay. But nevertheless, the interpretation was municipal construction was not covered by this order. We could continue working. So that is what's going on.
Thank you, Eric. I really would like to thank both Eric Macfarlane for the presentation and to sharing his thoughts about the situation and his experience with COVID-19 and the process that they follow at DDC, from the different safety processes that were put in place to the continued discussion and meetings and checking in with the personnel, not only the active personnel that were working with the project, but also with the personnel in general that was part of the community of DDC, to ensure that they still feel part of the organization. So we really appreciate your thoughts, sharing us this information at this level of detail. It has been very helpful, very thought-provoking. Some of your answers to our questions in terms of the bureaucracy and how to move some of these projects once we get the go-ahead post-COVID, I think is going to be very important. As you're saying, there are examples in which this has been accomplished. 9/11 definitely is a prime example, and I think there is a lot that we can learn from those types of experience. I also would like to thank our moderator, co-moderator, Marcos Gonzalez, for the discussions and the questions, and as well as the collaborating organizations, ACEC New York, AIA New York, ASCE, CMAA New York, New Jersey, ENR, and NAC. Thanks so much for your support and collaboration with this series. I also would like to thank our colleagues at Columbia who helped put this together, Michael Smith, who actually is the one that makes the magic happen with all the technology, Charles Cheng and Rick Bell. And I would like also to thank all the offices agencies throughout the city of New York for the great work that they are doing, and for all of you to participating and joining in. Remember that next Tuesday, May 26th, also from noon to 1 p.m., we will have the third lecture in the series. Our guest speaker will be Danielle Sarelli, Chief Climate Policy Advisor and one NYC Director in the New York City Office of the Mayor. The title of his talk is Putting Climate at the Heart of COVID-19 Recovery, a very pertinent topic as we think of a future post-COVID-19. My co-moderator at that time will be Jan Tuckman, Editor-in-Chief of Engineering News Record, and save the day also for the fourth lecture on Tuesday, June 2nd, again at noon, and when the speaker will be King Yao, Principal at Architecture Research Office and the 2020 President of AI New York. Thanks again, and stay well, all of you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Eric.
Okay,
Thank you, Marcos.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.